Hello, friends. University of Dice, Dave here. I am feeling much better. I might still sound a little congested. You'll also might notice the beard's gone. Whatever. Had that beard for about 4.5 years since my daughter was born. Decided it was time. In any case, I decided with her input. By the way, don't mistake me. But thank you for being patient with me. I am feeling so much better. Just bear with me as I get things back on track with my production schedule. Dice Fight XL happened just about a week and a half ago as I record this. There's a lot to talk about, so I want to break down my perspective and what I think we learned about the metagame from Dice Fight. So this was my team. I did a Batman Jubilee thing. A Jubilee, of course, deals damage when you field stuff. Batman deals damage when your stuff gets knocked out. They synergize really nicely together. There are some different choices I would make if I could go back and rebuild this team from the beginning, but generally speaking, I was going Poison Ivy into Jubilee into Batman, with things like Mystique there to help defend against range. Pip never actually ended up happening. Typhoid, I think, happened once when my opponent used a Mystique against me, and that did help and do some work. But in hindsight, this is extremely vulnerable to force attacks, and there were a few of those force attack globals. We'll talk about that in a minute. The takeaways right now is that the meta is very fast. It's very aggressive oriented. Your Barry Allens, your Master Molds, your frontline teams, those are probably the most consistent things that you'll have right now. Unfortunately, despite the volume of cool control pieces that I really like, control is not currently viable. Now that's going to be its own video that I'll put up sometime after this one. And consequentially to that, there's a lot of excellent win conditions that currently don't have a good place. Not with the force attacks there, because there are win conditions that require stuff to sit in the field, and they can't do that. Right? Let's just look at the volume of cards that have force attack. We have 3 of 4 energy types give us force attack globals. All of them are characters except for one, the Slinger's basic action card, and that's going to come up in a moment. So force attack is all over. And I will say too, if you don't have Slingers, go get that WizKids Dice from Home kit or whatever it was called, and get Slingers. It's actually going to be important to have, I would think. So what options are there to deal with this, right? The problem is I have stuff I want to sit in the field. I have those persistent effects. If we look back and say like Typhoid Mary, right? I want her to sit in the field. Or Batman or Jubilee, I want them to sit in the field, but they get force attacked out. My opponent doesn't care how much damage they take as long as they're not taking 20. So what can we do against this right now? Well, these might be the only options. I'll also add that Nefarious Broadcast could be a component of this. I think it has several drawbacks, not the least of which that it is a temporary effect rather than a persistent one. Of course, these 2 cards represent a persistent one. A basic action card has all of the setup time of a character, but it's a temporary effect and it gives you nothing in the field, and it still has to roll just as a character does. So I think generally speaking, basic actions have a lot of drawbacks compared to characters. Typhoid Mary is great for 2 different things. One, I would use her to knock out a force attack global. Just blank that card. Pretty easy. But that being said, what about your opponent's ramp? They might have Mr. Sinister or whatever else. I think a better way to do this could be to use Angela to give everything infiltrate, and that makes the force attack meaningless. They at least have to block, and you might have some ways to mitigate attack damage, or at least if it's KO'd, you know you're rolling it next turn. If it goes through and into your used pile, that's what it's called. We play Dice Masters, did you know that? If it goes through and into your used pile, it could get stuck in your bag. So get Angela out, and then you could use Typhoid Mary to help deal with those global abilities that might ramp, such as Mr. Sinister, a very common one that we're seeing a lot right now, or some other threat that matters to you. But if you get Angela out there, you can go a long way towards negating the force attack. The trouble is her cost. Again, we're going to talk about control another time. We'll get back to that. Both Typhoid Mary is a little more difficult to buy as well. She doesn't contribute to a win condition on her own at present, for reasons I'll again talk about when we dedicate more time to control. But in general, it's because of how hard it is to get those win conditions out that can synergize with control pieces before aggro just destroys you. So that's kind of that. Is help on the way? Maybe. We get distraction back in Secret Wars, and therefore that means the remove attacker global is back. I don't know if that's enough on its own. The big piece that helped control teams back in the day, apart from having the speed of Professor X, was Human Paladin. Unless we get an equivalent to that, even an imperfect one, control is going to remain in a tough spot for a bit. Nonetheless, that's a little bit about Dice Fight XL. I saw some Bard teams. I saw some interesting stuff using range. A lot of cool stuff out there, but I do think that what we saw is that the speediest teams are the best teams right now. Mid-range and control are at a disadvantage, at least they, and will remain so at least until Secret Wars comes, barring some kind of action from WizKids. I don't know that I expect that action ahead of Worlds. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon on University of Dice. Bye.